Sanu inalafia, inakwana. Good morning. I hope that you are well. I hope that your family is well and that you had a good night's sleep. This would have been a common greeting that we learned when we were in Nigeria. And I hope that you are well, and I hope that your family is well, and that you continue to follow the protocol that's laid out before us. I hope that you're remembering to wash your hands with warm water and soap. I hope that you're remembering to use hand sanitizer as needed, not to touch your face, to keep social distancing, and to stay at home. You know, I know it's getting a long time at home, but it's working. And it's the best way that we have of bringing us to the safest resolution to this virus. So I encourage you, hang in there. We're all in this together. You know, a lot of people have been asking what the situation is like in Nigeria these days. And so I thought, what better way to find out than to pick up the phone and call my good friend, Dr. Rebecca Dali. She's staying in South Carolina right now with her son, taking care of her grandson. So she answered the phone, and Rebecca and Samuel were on one end of the speakerphone, and Dave and I were on the other, and we had a great time catching up. It was just so good to hear their voices. And I was able to ask her about the situation in Nigeria. You know, we would have met the Dalis first in about 2016. And that was when the Take 10 Tell 10 team from Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren went to visit in Nigeria. About a year before that, a little more than a year prior to that, the Boko Haram had come through northeast Nigeria, where much of the Church of the Brethren is located, and they had murdered thousands of people, mostly men, and they had burnt churches and homes and hospitals and schools, and just really ravaged the Northeast. The whole headquarters moved out of the Northeast, and it was just chaos because of the violence and the threat, the continued threat that even continues yet today. When we went over to visit, part of the purpose of our going over was to bring greetings from the U.S., from the church in the U.S., to hear the stories, to bring words of encouragement and to pray with our friends, and also to learn from our friends, which indeed we did. We were able to bring those stories back and share them as far as we could. Take 10, tell 10. 10 people come back and each of them shares 10 stories. And so we were able to do that. While we were there, we had the privilege of helping Rebecca Dali with one of her food distributions. Rebecca has a nonprofit agency, Center for Caring, Empowerment and Peace Initiatives, CEPI it's called. And we were able to distribute food goods and some dry goods to the widows and orphans. You know, with the insurgency, the men were the target, which left behind many widows, thousands of widows and orphans. And women have very little way of making a living in Nigeria, of being able to feed their families. So Rebecca provided for that with these food distributions, which she had perfectly orchestrated and was able to distribute rice and corn and buckets and soap and blankets and ropes and all of the things that just for very basic living for women that had no homes, had nothing but the clothes on their backs, literally. When we were about done with that distribution, Rebecca got a call that there was another group of about 30 widows that were on their way, and their husbands and the men had been murdered that morning by the Boko Haram, or by the Fulani tribesmen who had come through the area and murdered the farmers. So their widows and orphans arrived, and we were able to distribute even more food and dry goods and help many more women. And it was just an amazing ministry that Rebecca has that continues because the needs continue. As we were finishing up, we stood in a circle and held hands to pray. And that's often the custom in Nigeria, is to pray when you come somewhere and to pray when you leave. And Rebecca said, "Your love is overwhelming." And she was moved to tears. There were the 10 of us with her in the circle. And I asked Rebecca, how can we what should we take back to tell the church U.S.? And she said, tell them to pray for peace. She said, it's as if we're standing here holding hands around the world and across the ocean. And she wept, and we wept with her. And I think that's how it is these days, that we hold hands around the world and across the ocean. The situation in Nigeria is not good. And the widows and the orphans continue to be hungry and to need supplies. Especially in these days, the marketplaces close with the coronavirus. And so the women can neither sell their goods nor buy food for their family. And it's very difficult to get money or food items over to the folks in Nigeria. So we continue to remember them, continue to hold them in our prayers. And I think that as we think about the situation we have, as we stand and hold hands, we are keenly aware that we are all connected and that we need one another and that we see God in our very midst as we help one another, as we pray for one another, and as we reach across the ocean and extend that love and those prayers. Sanu.